morning, good morning, good morning. So I'm sure there are going to be folks coming in and we'll pick up the program as we get going, but beautiful, beautiful Phoenix morning. Welcome, my name is Peter Gold. Welcome to the Global Interdependence Center's inaugural Southwest Economic Summit, the Americas 2014. Today, some of the best national and international experts and leaders will be sharing their views on the role of two of Arizona's largest cities in international trade, the impact of international trade on small business, corporate views in the Americas, trade in the Americas, investment in Arizona, supply chains and international trade, and looking at the question, will international trade continue to drive growth in the Americas? Those are our topics. I note also that we're meeting on the 20th anniversary of NAFTA, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from many of our distinguished speakers today on their views on that, and we'd appreciate your participation as our audience as well. So this is, as I said, our inaugural conference, so I'm just going to assume that many of you do not have a profound knowledge of what the GIC is and what we do. And I'd very much like to spend a few minutes, if you permit me, just giving you a little background on the GIC. So the Global Interdependence Center, the GIC, is very much interested in this part of the United States and in the Western Hemisphere. Simply and uniquely, the GIC is a lens which focuses on global interdependence rather than independence, but interdependence. Within our core competencies and mission, we try to identify events, conditions, and changes which are or may be occurring, for instance, the privatization of the Mexican oil industry. And then, how do those events or conditions impact other regions, countries, businesses, and people? For instance, how does that privatization of oil affect the natural gas industry in the United States, in Russia, in Canada? Hot topics like that. Another example, and maybe we'll hear a little about this today, is how does Walmart's decision to move to same-day delivery affect international supply chains? Who will be the players in that capital market? Will there be some sifting going on there? Our programs are generally, but not exclusively, concentrated around international trade, finance, monetary policies, U.S. and international central banking activities, and international manufacturing. Our audience, and certainly our presenters, are usually the highest level of bankers, central bankers, investment advisors, portfolio managers, manufacturers, academicians, policymakers, government leaders, underwriters, insurance, and the media. GIC has hosted programs and conferences spanning the globe, covering such topics as economic development in Nigeria, the economies of the Baltic Sea countries, Puerto Rican debt, the housing crisis, establishing a sustainable healthcare network in Ghana, the Middle East energies challenges. Conferences have been held in Santiago, Accra, Stockholm, Warsaw, Paris, Toledo, Philadelphia, Tokyo, Tallinn, Shanghai, Dubai, and 40 other locations just in the last 3 years. For more information on the GIC, and we're a membership organization, please, I invite you to our website, www.interdependence.org, or please speak with one of us today, our board members or our wonderful staff that are here today. And I would very much like our board members who are in the room just to stand for a moment and our staff to stand so I could just introduce you just very quickly and folks know who you are. So starting on my left, we have David Kotak from Cumberland Advisors, one of our vice chair and a huge supporter of the Global Interdependence Center. Then Bill Dunkelberg, Professor Dunkelberg, Dean Dunkelberg, also is here with us from Temple's Fox School of Business and Emeritus Chair of the GIC. Catherine Mann from Brandeis University, better here than in Boston, I assume. I'm not sure, but whatever. And Jill, thank you, and Jill Fornito, who's standing there, our Chief of Operations, and Amanda is outside, I guess, and Ben is outside as well. But please speak with us because we are a organization that seeks collaboration. We seek to build relationships, and we would like to meet each one of you and have a discussion and dialogue. So talking about collaborations, for which we are most grateful. Our planning partners for this event are the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, ASU Carey School of Business, the Arizona Commerce Authority, the Phoenix Business Journal, and the Arizona Bankers Association. Without their help, this would not have occurred, and we are profoundly in their debt, and thank all of them very, very much. Our event sponsors today are McDonald's Corporation, Wells Fargo, Greater Phoenix Economic Council, Arizona Commerce Authority, Arizona Bankers Association, Cumberland Advisors, the Government of Canada, Intel, the Phoenix Business Journal, and Freeport-McMoRan Gold, Copper and Gold. And by the way, I want to say two things about that company. One, I apologize for my pronunciation, Mel, of the name of the company. And second, I really appreciate the fact you put my name in your company's name. So pass that along, please. But thank you for doing it. Thank you all our sponsors. Typical of Arizona hospitality, our planning partners, our sponsors, and several other organizations here who we worked with welcomed us into the state without reservation. We are most grateful, and it wouldn't have happened without them. And a sincere thanks to all of you, and you know who you are. Thank you also to our presenters. Thank you for preparing. Thank you for coming to one of the best climates in the world at this time of the year. And thank you for sharing your views and insights with us. And thank you also to our audience for taking time out of your busy days to attend. We hope and we're confident that you'll find value here today and look forward to establishing a relationship with each one of you and continuing our relationship. So how do we operate? How will we operate today? We will endeavor to stay on schedule. With the exception of our lunch and keynote speaker, we have organized the day into topic panels. Panel members will present their view and reserve a meaningful amount of time for your questions to them. And we encourage your questions and your insights on the topics which are discussed today. We will adhere to the program which is in your packet with the exception of one special presentation that we hope to make in the 1:15 segment, a very special presentation, so please join us with that. And a note for the bankers in the audience, thanks to the assistance of the Arizona Bankers Association, this program has been approved for CTFA credits by the Institute of Certified Bankers, and you can report your credits by going to their website, which is icbmembers.org. Finally, if there's anything we can do to make this conference even more enjoyable for any of you in the audience, please do let us know. We would very much like to do that. And with that, that sort of sets the stage, gives you a little background about who we are. So let's get into it and what we're going to do today. And to do that, to lead us off, I'd like to introduce the moderator of our first panel, which is Phoenix and Mesa Gateway to the Americas. I'd like to introduce Michael McNiven to you. Michael is a senior leader at Cumberland Advisors. He is responsible for international and global equity portfolios. And his bio, as all our presenters' bios, are in the packet which we have given to you. But little things about Michael that I just want to share. He was a resident of Mesa for a while, and we are so happy that he has Southwest Arizona, the Southwest U.S. experience and Arizona experience and Mesa experience, and I'd just like to ask Michael and the panel to come on up now and lead us through the first talk. Thank you.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to invite the panel to come down. We have Mayor Scott Smith and Hank Marshall coming to join us. Mayor Smith probably needs very little introduction to you all here, so we're glad to have you, Mayor. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Hank, welcome as well.
So Michael has graciously agreed just to allow me 2 seconds to observe two things about Mayor Smith, and he may or may not remember this. So in 2008, our company was engaged to do a project with Arizona State University concerning the aerospace industry. And one of the people who they asked me to meet with and who was most generous with his time was actually Mayor Smith. And we met with him, and he said one of the things I remember so distinctly is that, Peter, good jobs are very important to Arizona. Good jobs are very important to Mesa. We appreciate the creation of all jobs, but mid-wage jobs and high-wage jobs, please take a look at that, and I pledge our cooperation of our government to that end in anything you need to proceed. And we had the full cooperation of the Mesa government, and we are most appreciative. And for all these years, I have not forgotten your charge to do that. So thank you and welcome.
So let me begin today. We are speaking our first panel here. One, we need to mix it up a little bit and make sure we get started on the right foot. And so I thought it would be fun for me to speak about when I came to the greater Phoenix area 19 years ago, almost to the day. And I showed up, I had been out of the country for a couple years, and I showed up with $10, a suit, one pair of jeans, and a sister who said, here's a place to stay, and here's an old Honda, and it has some gas in it. And when that gas runs out, you're going to need to fill it up. And that's how I got my start in this great area. And I came to Arizona, and I loved it here. Who can forget the first time you see the Arizona sunset? Amazing. But what I was most appreciative for was an opportunity to start. And so I went to a temporary agency, hiring agency in Tempe, and I said, no one seems to be hiring me. What's my problem? And they said, you're wearing a suit. Rule number one about getting a job in Arizona, be careful how you wear the suit, especially if you're a young man, 21 years old. I got a job over in Scottsdale performing phone interviews for market research. So we called people and asked them, are you planning to make a major purchase in the next 6 months? And there's all the box, and if so, is it a refrigerator? Is it a car? What type of car? Whatever. And after about a month of that, I said, you know what, this is all interesting, and I appreciate all of my Arizona State student fellow colleagues. I think I need something different. And so I went down Main Street in Mesa, and I applied at every car dealership I could see. And at that point, there were quite a few. And about 4 or 5 down the road, I stopped in at Tony Corey Buick GMC truck. And they said, you're going to have to go down to the main office. So I went down to the main office, and they said, no, go back to the other office down in Extension. I went down there. A guy said, hey, what do you need? I said, I need a job, a J-O-B. And he said, well, good, here's the deal. I'll teach you. I'll let you work here. You have to make a deal with me. And I said, sure, what's the deal? And he said, don't stay in the car business. And so he kept his deal, I kept mine. And so here we are 19 years later. But I was very thankful for what this region provided for me, which was some work. That's how I was able to fund myself through college. And since then, of course, I've been out on the East Coast for the last 10 years. But it's been a very good opportunity for me to come and to participate in what I think is the role of a great community, which is to have economic vitality. Now, I'm going to say something that seems a little harsh, but I'll be honest, I don't give a damn about politics. I really don't care about politics, only insofar as it produces government that is of the people, for the people, by the people, right? It's about the people. And when I think about this, and as I think about our panel today, we're talking about this greater region of Phoenix. And I want to give you something that might seem a little afield as I introduce this panel. But I'm somebody who likes to read widely if I can. And one of the things I was reading many years ago when I was roaming through my college years, I was reading about ancient Egypt and the pharaohs. And I was thinking, what a terrible place to live. You've got these dictators, and they do all these onerous burdens on the people. And then I realized, no. There's something else going on. It's really a form of latent democracy, hard democracy. And why? Because the pharaoh claimed to be God. But there was accountability for that. The accountability was, if it didn't rain, the people rose up. Because if there's no rain, there's no crops. And if there's no crops, there's no food. And if there's no food, there's no more Pharaoh. And so that colors my view of what is one of the central roles of government. You know, we think things have changed so much over the centuries and the millennia, when in fact, not a lot has changed. One of the central roles of government is to provide economic vitality, to provide rules that are clear, to provide laws that are clear, that give people who want to take risk opportunities to take that risk and hopefully be rewarded for taking that risk. So I'm here to introduce today, and I'm thankful as a recipient of this area. When I came, I needed a job, and the people of Tony Corey Buick gave me a job and was able to get started in here. And I'm thankful now for this conversation that we have. We have two great panelists, and so the format of this is I'm going to introduce our two panelists here. They're going to take a few minutes, somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes, to tell us what their thoughts are about the subject here, which is about economic vitality of this region. And then we'll have some time for questions and go from there. So our first speaker today, we're thankful to have Mayor Scott Smith with us from the great city of Mesa, where I used to park cars. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity, especially when it was 115 degrees at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in July. And I said, you know what, it's a great time to be alive.
Welcome to Arizona.
Yep. So Scott Smith was first elected mayor of Arizona. That's the third largest city in Arizona and 38th largest in America in 2008. He was reelected to a second term unopposed in 2012. He is currently serving as the president of the United States Conference of Mayors, Arizona's first mayor to lead the organization. He earned a degree in accounting from Brigham Young University and an MBA and Juris Doctor from Arizona State University. I know many of you are familiar with Mayor Smith and his energy towards governing in the city of Mesa, and we're looking forward to what he has to tell us of some of his initiatives, especially as it relates to the economic vitality of this area. I'm going to introduce briefly also Hank Marshall, who's with us from the city of Phoenix. Hank was named the Economic Development Executive Officer in March last year. He oversees the department's international business development and business retention, expansion programs, and initiatives. The team is charged with pursuit of opportunity that advances economic prosperity for the city of Phoenix. Prior to joining the city of Phoenix, Marshall was Vice President of International at the Arizona Commerce Authority. Marshall was one of the key executives that assisted with the launching of the Arizona Commerce Authority in July 2011. So our format will be, we'll have Mayor Smith speak to us for 8 to 10 minutes, or however much you feel, and then we will have Hank Marshall speak, and then we'll have some time for a roundtable discussion. And I have several questions that I'm interested and anxious to ask as well. So with that, Mayor Smith, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you to GIC for asking me to be here. to speak about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is creating opportunity and economic vitality. I actually am not a real fan of politics either. I know that sounds a little strange. Being mayor was my first political job. I never had any intention or desire to get into politics. I disdained politics. I saw it as a waste of energy, and I still believe that most of the politics we practice is a waste of energy, a waste of effort. It doesn't really get us anywhere but in a gigantic circle. And I ran actually as mayor of Mesa because I had been in business many, many years, and had grown a business from, well, actually I was hired to shut the business down, and by the time I sold it, I ended up buying the business. By the time I sold it 6 years later, we were doing almost $200 million a year in revenue. And so I've grown a business, and I interacted a lot with government, with mostly local government. And after I left the company that I had sold it to, there was an election in Mesa. And I said, you know, I've been complaining about local government. I've learned to understand the interaction between business and government better than I ever thought, because I worked on it on a daily basis. And so I ran basically with a very simple mantra as mayor of Mesa. I wanted to change the way Mesa did business. I wanted to change the way they interacted, because I learned that the mantra that government does not create wealth was not a political statement. It's really a statement of fact. History has shown that government is incapable of creating wealth. Government can stifle wealth. Government can suck all the energy out of the room. Government can create barriers which keeps private investment from happening. And there's this balance. And so I looked and I said, I saw how, as a developer and home builder, what frustrated me the most was how government put a lid on what I could do. I wanted to go in there and do things that were beyond, off the checklist, so to speak. I wanted to do things that were beyond expectations, and I got frustrated when government told me, no, you cannot make that kind of investment. You cannot do this, because those don't fit in our regulations. And so we started with the mantra in Mesa that creating an economic vitality begins with creating a culture of two things. First of all, and once again, this isn't a political culture, a culture that is focused on a specific goal and objective. I found that in our city, as in most of Arizona, we have no real focus on what we want to accomplish through economic development. And therefore, we take very much a scattergraph or shotgun approach to things. Sometimes we hit the target. Many times we fire into midair. But when I got to Mesa, I realized that we were missing more than we were hitting. And there was a couple reasons for that. Number one is the lack of focus. And so I asked a simple question. What are we trying to accomplish here? What are we trying to do? Is it simply to attract a company coming in here? Because if simply attracting a new company into our market is our economic strategy, it's not a sustainable strategy. You have to build a foundation. And we bantered about a little bit, and I asked a question: what are we good at? Because I found in business that the way you're most successful is building upon those things you do well. Now that sometimes isn't the sexiest thing, but it's the smartest thing. When I was in business, I was neither the biggest, I wasn't the richest, didn't have the biggest staff. So we found out what we were really good at. We were good at being nimble. We were good at being creative. We were good at finding niches. And so we created our own strength. And what we found out is after a little while, not only were we successful, but others tried to emulate us. And so I said, why can't that work in the city? And in the city of Mesa, what we decided, we looked at, we said, you know, we're really good in healthcare. There's been almost $1 billion of investment in the last 5 years in new healthcare facilities in Mesa, including some very big names, MD Anderson Cancer, brand new children's hospital, everything. We're good in education, our K-12 educational system, and I'm biased because my father was superintendent of schools in Mesa for almost 18 years, but it's recognized one of the top school districts in the country. And it's a top 50 district that graduates more people than ever. But we were somewhat weak once we got out of high school, our post-secondary. We have ASU in Tempe, we had ASU Polytechnic in Mesa, but we had no options. So that's something we were good at, we wanted to get better at. We were very good in aerospace. We have Boeing, we have a huge brand new airport, we had great things, and we were good in tourism. And tourism is a dirty word sometimes in economic development. And I asked the question, why would you ever make, and I don't care what city you're from, I guarantee you that tourism is either the number 1, 2, 3, or 4 top economic generator in your city. And it doesn't matter whether you're rural, whether you're a big city or whatever. It just is a generator of economic activity. So healthcare, education, aerospace, tourism. Hey, guess what? We can make an acronym out of it. And when you go in government, it's great. You can make acronyms. So you love make acronyms. But if you look at it, healthcare, education, aerospace, tourism, hey, HEAT, heat. That sort of is appropriate for Arizona, right? So that became our mantra, is we're going to focus on heat. And everything we did was defining it heat, 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 heat. Whenever we came up with a policy, whenever our educational system, whenever all that came up, we said, how does this fit in with heat? How does it, what is the focus? What that led to was some pretty spectacular things. We eventually added another T to it, technology, because we found that we were also good in high tech. We got a high tech lab that we took over from the Air Force, but everything was focused on what can we do to build this, with the idea that we would build organically. We would create this environment of excellence. That's the other thing I found, that we were very much, my community, and I believe my state now, has become very much happy and conditioned to accept average. I'm a big fan of Jim Collins. I do read every once in a while. And one of my favorite books was Good to Great. And I've always looked at his saying, which is, good is the enemy of great, to be very true. And I would ask during the campaign, how many of you parents, when you send your kid out the door or school every day, said, hey, have a very average day. I hope you're average in school. Nobody hopes for average, and yet as communities and states, somehow we start to accept average. And that is the killer in economic development, economic activity. You cannot accept average and hope to attract good things. So we put in place a very well-defined plan, which was the anti-shotgun approach. We said this is not going to be an overnight deal. It's going to be a long term, and it's going to be based on very certain dynamics. And first of all, we have to change the culture of our government. I got frustrated that government was a regulate type of environment. That's the nature of government. They're very good at it. They've had hundreds of years of experience in regulating. But I also found out that starting with no inhibited real growth, inhibited creativity, inhibited innovation. And once again, trying to explain what it means to be the most business friendly. If anyone can explain that to me, I'd welcome that. Try to explain that to a bunch of bureaucrats. And I'm sitting there as a businessman going, here's what we need to do. We need to be lower regulation. We need to do this. And the bureaucrats would look back at me and they'd say, well, Mayor, we're already business friendly. See, I didn't realize that they thought they were doing a great job. So how to connect and change a culture became a very, very difficult proposition. And once again, recognize that I'm a very simple-minded kind of guy. I came up with another saying. They said, well, explain to us what it means to be business friendly. And I said, you've got to facilitate, not regulate. Hey, wait a second. That sort of has a ring to it. And so you'll go into City of Mesa now and you'll look at things that they'll say facilitate, not regulate. And what does that mean? What it means is that government does exist to bring order into a society. There's a reason why government, and it's a good reason. Without government, you have anarchy. Nobody thrives in anarchy. Well, yeah, some people will. They'll create their own government. So government exists for a good purpose. But that good purpose is to bring order to a process. That's why America has thrived. We have order in our legal system. We have order in our commercial system. We have more order than for over 200 years than anyone else has had. But that's gotten out of balance. And that regulation is we start with no, and maybe if you're a business, you can get us to yes. We said, no, your job is to help people succeed. When you have a rule, first of all, you have to look and see, is that a reasonable rule? Does that accomplish our purpose? If it doesn't, let's change the rule. If it is a good rule, then your job is to help whoever comes into your room, whoever gets across that table, to conform with that rule. And if they don't know how, your job is to help them. Facilitate their success. Start with yes until reality slaps you in the face and you get to know. It's amazing how that has changed. And one of the greatest compliments I get as mayor is when someone comes in like Apple Computer did just recently and invested $2 billion in City of Mesa. Great win for the state of Arizona. And that would have been good enough alone to make me happy as a mayor. But then we were having a post-announcement meeting with senior officials at Apple, and I got the greatest compliment I think I've gotten as mayor when a senior executive said, Mayor, I'll tell you, I have been with Apple many years, and I've worked throughout the world with all levels of government. I have never experienced a government as responsive and professional as the city of Mesa. I almost started to cry. I mean, it was amazing. It was spiritual. And that was followed up by a builder who said, Mayor, I came to Mesa. I quit doing business in Mesa about 8 years ago because it was such a mess. I finally, because this is where opportunity was, I came and did business recently, and I can tell you that it's night and day. And now Mesa, I will come here because Mesa is the finest. He said, what did you do? I said, have you heard of facilitate, not regulate? He said, you know, someone mentioned that to me. He said the attitude, the culture was completely different. The reason why I say that is neither heat nor facilitate nor regulate exist in a vacuum. They come together because when you say help people succeed, you say here's our focus, here's our goal, here's our objective. Apple was a big coup, but it was a 5-year process. And it involved something more than simply sitting with a company and negotiating a deal and seeing what incentives we could give. By the way, City of Mesa gave Apple not 1 cent in direct incentives, but what we did give them, we gave them a place that they could move into where infrastructure, massive infrastructure investment, targeted infrastructure investment had made that plant possible. We gave them a process where they could walk in, they said, oh, by the way, we need to do this, this, and this. And they went into a 1 million square foot facility that had actually been built by First Solar as of manufacturing, and then they had moved away from it. And First Solar used to brag to us that, you know, when we were in Malaysia, I always hate when I hear that, high-tech companies always start out, you know, in Vietnam we were able to do this. And they told us the whole thing, and I can't remember if it was Malaysia or Vietnam. They said, well, you know, we were able to this. We built a plant in 18 months in Vietnam. It was sort of like laying down the challenge. Well, I can tell you that from the first meeting that we had with First Solar, to certificate of occupancy, 15 months for a 1.2 million square foot manufacturing facility. Unheard of. You don't do that by accident. The reason we were able to do that is we set up a zoning structure, an entitlement structure, an infrastructure investment structure, and an economic development structure that all was focused, starting with heat, which came together, and then was followed up by facilitate, don't regulate. And all those things came together and beautiful things happened. So when Apple came up after First Solar decided not to use the facility, they had a plug-and-play facility. Now, they're investing another $2 billion in putting in specialized equipment and everything, but it all came down to what government can do to create this economic development. And that's basically, we plow the field. We set the stage. Private investment, then, is what creates wealth. Private investment is what makes things happen. As president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, one of my primary focuses, and you know, you get objectives, and one of my objectives was trade in the Americas. Once again, I look and see what are we doing, and you know, China's great. I've been to China 2 or 3 times on trade missions. It's a lot of fun, a lot of excitement. It's also like what 7,000 to 8,000 miles away, and it's a big ocean, and it's a different culture, and there's a unique way, different form of government, everything. And then I look south to a country that, hey, guess what? We're neighbors. We've had a long history. You know, it's been sort of like this, but great history, 20 years of NAFTA. I look to the north, my gosh, you know, you in the winter here especially, you see as many Alberta license plates as you do Arizona license plates in many places. And you say, why aren't we doing what we do with heat? Why aren't we building upon our strengths? And our strengths are trade with Mexico, trade with Canada. Let's focus on that. And so mayors from throughout the country are now focused on the trade in the Americas. Putting that focus, having a well-defined strategy, understanding where you want to end up is the secret of creating economic vitality. We're just one small example, but there's a lot of other cities that are doing things like this. We're learning how to go to that next level. We're learning how to create these opportunities. And the interesting thing, I'll end on this. I was talking with a Democratic mayor. I had 45 mayors from around the country here in Phoenix for a leadership conference over the weekend, and I had something really interesting. I'm a Republican. I'm in a minority as far as big city mayors go. Most of them are Democrat. And I was talking with 2 Democratic mayors from Midwestern and Northeast cities, and they said, you know what I've really enjoyed about the last 5 years is that the Democratic mayors have found the Chamber of Commerce. And I said, yeah, that's really interesting. In other words, you've become Republicans. And they said, what we've realized, and he said, this was good for my party. It's actually been bad for Republicans because Democrats are now running cities like Republicans do. That was my political statement, okay? And he said, no, we realized that that the overall vitality of a community cannot be separated by the economic vitality of a community. Why we couldn't see that, I don't know. And that's why you'll see some of the biggest champions of the chamber are Democratic mayors, because mayors lived it through this recession. We understood how those two cannot be separated. This is not a zero-sum game. This is a win-win type of proposition. And we've tried to make that work in Mesa. And hopefully, and in the region, we've seen that too. And Hank's now going to tell you, how about this segue? Hank's now going to tell you some of the stuff that they're happening in Phoenix, because we do not have a Mesa economy, don't have a Phoenix economy. This is a metro economy. You don't know where Mesa and Phoenix begins and ends. Most of you, if you're not from here, could care less where Mesa and Phoenix ends. You look at us as a gigantic Phoenix metro economy, and that's what we are. And so we've looked at this. This isn't regionalism. This is common sense. You build on your strengths. You make things happen. And for us, our strength is we have a great central city that is a great anchor to our region, and we build from that. Hank?
That's a hard act to follow. I'm almost at the point where I either say ditto or I yield my 5 minutes to my colleague to the right here. On behalf of Mayor Stanton, thank you all for being here. I'm the second string, if you will, batting this morning. Thank you to GIC for a fabulous event. Thank you for picking Phoenix, for hosting it here. I know you had your choice of where you could go. Please come back next year. We'd be delighted to have you back. A lot of familiar faces in the audience, and I could probably name all of you, but I won't. Thank you again for being here. When I heard Michael talk, I really enjoyed his story, but it kind of ties directly to what the mayor, I believe, just said was, you came here 19 years ago, and I suspect that in that time, Mesa and the area, the state itself has changed.
Yes.
But I'd like to say that I think that's also one of the downsides, that sometimes I think we think we're done, that we're finished, we've accomplished, we're good, we've gotten good at something. And I would echo that sentiment as kind of my common theme to what you had to say is, I think we have to get past that. I know a lot of you have heard me say that, is how do we strive to be great? Now, within the city of Phoenix, we talk about, since we couldn't use good to great, that was a violation. I see the lawyers in the room. No, you can't use that. So we've started using the term effective to exceptional. And how do we move along that? It's the facilitate instead of regulate. It's moving to that space of being exceptional in what you do. And I think I'd like to see us find a way to get there. Now, I don't want to get too carried away with my comments. I'd like to leave a lot of them to engage this wonderful audience to talk with us. But I'd like to leave a thought of mine. This is a Hankism, so if you want to blame it, it'll be entirely on me. The thought for our panel today was, I believe, gateway to the Americas, was how do we position ourselves as a gateway to the Americas? If I could, I'd like to take the liberty of making a little bit of a twist to that, because right now there are 3 places in the world that have already laid claim to that: New Orleans, Miami, and Panama. All of them right now consider themselves gateway to the Americas. I'd like to suggest, in the idea of a vision of a future, of what we're good at, what we could be good at, that we call ourselves connecting the Americas, that we serve that purpose. How many of you just recently read about the Google black fiber, the dark fiber coming into town? Big news, right? But guess what? We already have fiber. It's dark fiber. I wouldn't know what it is if I fell on it. But what's the big deal about dark fiber? It's enhanced connectivity. Okay? We have connectivity now, but it's enhanced connectivity. It allows us to connect to existing economies, future economies, resources, other things that right now may be limiting given the infrastructure that we have. So I'd like that kind of be the premise of where I think we as a region, we as a state, is the focus on connectivity and how we become relevant in it and how we play seriously in it. And I'd like to make that my final comment, because I think everything that the mayor said is something I would repeat. And I'd like to maybe return it back to Michael and open this up to what I hope would be a very spirited dialogue.
Thank you so much, both of you. I had a couple questions I wanted to ask, and then we'll open it up to our panel. So the thing that I thought I heard Mayor Smith say, which I agree with a lot, is everywhere I've gone, you see that the vitality of a region is tied to the vitality of the local, the local community. And when you start getting a big conglomerate and people lose their local identity, you lose something big. So that's just a statement I'm saying in general. But I think the importance of our conversation here is what is getting in the way of the interactions, let's call it, with Latin America. So as much as we appreciate the Canadians and they're coming here and the connection, what's getting in the way? I think that's it's not only an economic topic, it is also a social topic. We're talking about immigration, we're talking about immigration policy. So I just wanted to start with that conversation, and we'll start with the mayor. What, in your opinion, is getting in the way of that relationship? And do you have an idea on how we might address some of that?
Well, it's easy to look at SB 1070 and things like that, but those aren't actually the big problem. Those are symptoms of what I think is a bigger problem. I'm a fourth generation Arizonan. If I go into a room this size, I'm a rarity. Arizona is built by transplants, and that's great. New blood, new things. We love it. But one of the things you miss out on is that if someone comes here from elsewhere, you don't have the experience of growing up and learning that Arizona was actually part of Spain and Mexico longer than it's been part of the United States. There's this line we have down on our southern border is an artificial line that really doesn't separate the history or the culture. Many in the state now hardly understand or know that Mexico's down there. If they do, it's in a negative connotation. It is drugs, it is cartels, it is illegal immigrants. And what that done is that has held us back from recognizing the incredible opportunity that exists south of the border. I hadn't been to Mexico City in a little over 10 years. When I went back in September, meeting with high government officials, I was blown away. I went down there. My son was living down there at the time, 10 years ago, and I went out on the far part of town. There was a brand new mall in a very upscale part of town, and I said, it was, you could tell the mall was just sitting there on a sort of the side of a hill. It was amazing. I went back to that same area, this time 10 years ago, and I said, man, around here, I swear, there was a mall. And the driver's going, well, yeah, it's right there in front of you. Well, I couldn't see this mall because it was completely hidden among all the high-rises that had gone up. And those high-rises had names that we all recognize: Dell, Samsung, Microsoft, all multinational. Amazing, the transformation in Mexico. Economy that's growing faster than us. We're sitting here along the border, and yet you got to just say, hello, look south, look south. You understand that if we're going to expand our market, there's this huge opportunity looking south. Well, I don't want to go down there because there are drug cartels, but all the negativity. I think a lot of it is simply our inability to look to where real opportunity is. The other thing is a cultural thing in the U.S., and it's that for generations, we have never had to look outside our borders to create true opportunity, to expand our markets. For us in Arizona, expanding the market meant shipping into the LA basin. That was a stretch. Well, that's not the global economy anymore. The U.S. economy, demographically and everything, we're not in a huge growth mode that we used to be. If you're a small business or a large business, if you want to expand your market, you better be looking beyond the borders, because that's where the world economy is growing. And we haven't gotten there yet as Americans, and certainly not in Arizona.
What's the key problem? Can you put your finger on one thing outside of the fact there's a problem that you would say, well, gee, this is something that is actionable that we can begin to address?
I think the key problem in America, and it plays out here in Arizona, is a failure to fully comprehend the change in the world in the last 20 years. The world, as Thomas Friedman says, truly is flat, and it's changing quickly. And when I woke up in the morning, when I was in high school here in Mesa, Arizona, I never worried about competing with somebody in Bangalore, India, for my future. My grandkids, that's a reality. I never really thought of to me, the Eastern Bloc, communism, they weren't going anywhere. Heck, that was a dead-end type of thing. And then the Berlin Wall. If you think about what happened in this world between 1989 and 1993, our world, there was a seismic shift. The Berlin Wall fell, Soviet Union collapsed, and the internet really started working. Those three things alone completely changed how we live. As I talk to Americans and around that, they fully don't comprehend that, first of all, the manufacturing jobs that existed 40 years ago are never going to exist. Now, that doesn't mean that manufacturing isn't important and that it isn't a future. It's a different type of approach. That means that the things that make us great in America, we're the best innovators in the world, we're the most productive people in the world, have to be refigured and restructured. We're still throwing out old solutions for a new world. Frankly, that's what I think as I hear, because then when you start talking about opportunities in Latin America, people go, huh? You know, I was part of Google, speaking of Google, a Google initiative called Get Your Business Online. 70% of the businesses, small and medium-sized business in America, still don't have a website. How do you not thrive? How do you not exist in this economy without being online? When you look at the growth of the connectivity that Hank was talking about, and yet we still believe if we go down and put a bricks and mortar shop on Main Street, somehow that's going to be all that it takes. In some cases, that's the case, but most of them, no. You better be connected. If you're not connected, and when 70% of small and medium business still don't have a website, that tells me there is a disconnect between our entire attitude of how we have to operate.
So let's give Hank an opportunity to address the question of.
I'm going to use ditto again, but I'd like to add just a little bit of a spin. I think my take would be, after having lived in South America a good portion of my life, the way I look at Arizona is I think there is a great deal of comfort in, and maybe the U.S. as a matter of fact, a great deal of comfort in dealing with and interacting with established economies. So I take a look, we're happy to sell something to Denver. We're happy to sell something to Germany because it's established. Look at emerging economies, whether it's the BRICS or MINT or whatever the acronym of the day is. That's where read any new article, read any paper about where the economy is going to grow, where that wealth creation is going to come from in the next 20 years. It's going to take place in a lot of these emerging economies. The wealth creation, the creation of the middle class, the creation of that demand is going to come from that part of the world. And I think it touches on something you said, that there is, I don't want to use the word apprehension, but maybe it's just an inability to find out how to deal with emerging nations. Is it a peerage thing? I don't know. But I think, how do we get past that and understand that there's an opportunity to be leveraged? And that would be, I think, my point.
So let me ask one sensitive question, and then we'll open it up here to the audience. So one of the things that I think, if you look at the states, you've got California, Texas, maybe New Orleans at some level, specifically Florida as well, down in the Miami area, where you go there and you feel, wow, there is a lot of connectivity with Latin America. And yet, I think in the minds of many, that especially south of the border, that Arizona is not your friend. Texas may be, Florida certainly is, California probably is, but there's something about Arizona which doesn't like you if you're south of the border. How do you address that?
Well, we've done a good job of creating that impression and that perception and really fortifying it by our actions and the actions of our legislature. But when you look at most people here and most of the businesses, they certainly don't have that attitude, and people living in daily life don't have that attitude. You just got to go and interact. I've been to Mexico now 3 times in the last 9 months, meeting with high government officials saying, listen, and they're starting to get it. They recognize that these are blips in a long-term relationship. The best way we can change that is really for those. There's a new silent majority out there. I mean, most of us are old enough to remember the old silent majority back in the Nixon and Reagan years, where had a very different connotation. Now the silent majority is people who are living their lives, looking to expand their business. They don't get hung up on the things that are happening on either the far left or the far right, because that's not real world. That's not real life. And it's not a political statement. It's just how it is. You run your business. You do this. You operate with all people in a very diverse world. We just have to interact, and we have to work harder than Texas and California does, because, as you said, the perception is they have a friendlier reception. I would say that from a business to business, there's no difference. In many things, Arizona tries harder. We do a better job of connecting. It's just a message that has to get out, and we're working hard to do that, and we'll continue to work hard to do that.
Hank, do you have anything?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think it's entirely perception. I think if you spend time with Anybody who's visiting here from Mexico, whether they're mayors of border states or people here from Mexico City, a lot of that wave came and went. There's still a little bit of lingering issues that I think are up to us to get rid of. They're not going to go away. I think it's that lingering rash that we have to treat. If you took a look at the trade numbers that came out last week, Arizona's trade exports, if you will, were up about 5%. I know Kevin can correct me in the audience if I'm off a little bit, but ironically, the single biggest contributor to our improvement was Mexico. Mexico was up 12%, by far and away 2 to 3 times anybody else that we trade with. So we're getting hung up on something when indicators are we're getting on with doing business. It's happening. It may be a story that we have to tell ourselves, get ourselves to believe in and move on.
Okay, so I just wanted to note, when I go to Miami, which I go there quite often, I get the flavor of, this is the center of Latin America, right? Now, here we're talking about Arizona and Mexico, but we're not talking about Venezuela, Argentina, Chile, as it relates to Arizona. So that's just a conversation. How do you create, and maybe we need to just take a question, Mayor, if you don't mind, but
Yeah,
I'm just making a statement that our conversation here is, what do we do south of the border? But that's
It's all
really
Latin America.
It's a
Latin America.
Mexico-Arizona conversation, but in fact, it should be a Mexico-Latin America.
I think people find out real quick about this time of year, a little earlier, when they go to their produce section, and if you look at it, there's very few, well, not now, but in December, January, early February, you look at your produce section, where does everything come from? Mexico, Guatemala, Chile. That's where it comes from. I think people get that message now, that they understand that on a daily basis, Latin America is much more important than they thought it was.
Very good. We have a few minutes for questions, so let's start right here. Melissa, I believe, right? I'll repeat the question when you're done. Oh.
Actually, you might not have to if the microphone is working. I have a two-part question, which kind of flows from what you just said, Michael, and also picking up on Mayor Smith's comment about facilitation. The first part of the question is there a way that current or future political structures in this state can facilitate cooperation among the state's urban centers? You called Phoenix a large metropolitan area. At the same time, there's fearsome competition between the metropolitan area elements to attract economic developers to their zone. And while overall, over the long term, the metropolitan area benefits, in the short term, the competition can be terribly limiting, particularly when you pit the Phoenix metropolitan area against the Tucson metropolitan area, or the Yuma metropolitan area, or the Flagstaff metropolitan area. It strikes me that as a state, we would do better with some sort of facilitating pinnacle vision that mobilizes the resources throughout the state to the benefit of the state. So part one, can that facilitation happen? Part two, how would that facilitation be able to maximize the benefits for the state from what we all hope will be the upcoming Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP?
Well, first of all, you can change that in the state. The best way to do that is in the next gubernatorial election, we laugh, but actually that's one of the reasons I'm running for governor. I've been very frustrated by the energy we waste pitting one community in one place down there. Hey, as a mayor, I will tell you, I'll be honest with you, every mayor, if Mayor Stanton were here, we like going to ribbon cuttings. That's cool. That's fun. It's also a short term. The fact is there's going to be plenty of ribbon cuttings for everybody if we have that kind of approach. We're better today than we were 5 years ago, because part of that is the realization that we can only advance building upon our strengths, and our strengths are as a state and a region as a whole. Mesa cannot compete for the type of, even Phoenix cannot compete as well for the type of economic opportunities as Metro Phoenix can. Metro Phoenix can't compete as well as the Sun Corridor, which is Phoenix, Tucson. The U of A and ASU can compete better when they're joining forces than they can when they're separate. That takes leadership from the top, and now I'm speaking just realistically, to talk about an Arizona vision, an Arizona plan, as opposed to a Phoenix Mesa plan, Phoenix Tucson plan, which will which will get us to good, will not get us to great.
Okay, another question. Anybody? Right in the back.
Hello, my name is Anselmo. I just wanted to know, do you see any other regions taking steps to improve their relationship with Latin America that Arizona as a whole could take?
I'll let Hank do, because City of Phoenix has taken the lead on something with Mexico, for example, that I think is pretty exciting.
Well, I think that we're working with a variety of stakeholders, including metropolitan Phoenix cities, as well as the state, to try and, at least in our position, put a presence in Mexico City, which the state had done a number of years ago. So it's not a new idea. I think it's just a new way of doing it and finding a way to engage on a different level with different objectives. But in what we're doing, we're about 30 years behind Texas. You know, Texas has a footprint in Mexico and Mexico City that is going to take us probably 30 years to achieve. But what they've managed to do is have that connectivity and that relevance that has really afforded them the kind of opportunity that they see on a regular basis. So I think we've got apparent opportunity to mirror, if you will. But again, I'm also somebody that will say, we just don't want to replicate what Texas did. We have to have a unique Arizona offering. And maybe we need to study what that is and fully understand what that is, because that's where the win is going to be. That's what's going to be sustainable, not copying Texas. What's our deal? What's our game, and what's our offering? I hope that answered the question.
So we have time for one more question right here in front.
Microphone's coming up for you.
Hi, my name is Mark Roberts. I'm just interested in what role you see small business exports taking in the next 5 years from Arizona, non-hospitality related.
You know, small businesses create most of the jobs in this country. They make up 70+% of the economy, small and medium-sized businesses. Less than 1% of them are involved in any kind of export activity. They're sort of sit out. Most of the exports in America is done by large companies and large entities. I think that, number one, education, on two-part education. First of all, letting small and medium-sized business understand that their greatest opportunity for expanding their markets may be outside the U.S. Number two is educating them that while that seems like a daunting task, it's really easier than you think. There's a lot of resources out there at the state level and at the federal level to help small and medium businesses get through the labyrinth of problems, of challenges you have in dealing internationally. I think there's a huge opportunity. One quick story about a business in Mesa that devised cooling systems for milk cows. Apparently, when it gets 100 degrees, milk cows quit lactating. Well, at least they go down. And so this business, you know, it does get, as Mike told you, it does get above 100 degrees here in Arizona. So they developed this system for cooling so that in the summer. Well, they, by happen chance, small little business, that by happen chance, they got hooked up with a sheik from Saudi Arabia. Now they do almost 80% of their business in the Middle East because they found that in the Middle East it also gets above 100 degrees. Small business that now has gone international and has now another business in Mesa, started out with 100 employees, now has almost 400 employees, exports to 60 countries doing aerospace business. Knowing what the opportunity is and understanding that they too can make it, business associations, chambers of commerce, small business federation, whatever you have are the best place for small business to really feel like they're not going it alone. They can make it happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our panelists for a fine discussion.
You're very welcome. It was a lot of fun. He was a superstar.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, wait, hey, we got to get a shout out for Glenn Williamson. We talked about Mexico. If we don't mention Canada, he's going to get all upset. Canada is huge. There, is that good? Thank you very much.
That was very, very informative. We have a brief coffee break now, and then